You can't put that in. Please don't put that in. That is something we will get sued for.
I don't know. That's pretty good.
Welcome to Damnit Jim, the podcast. A fun and fascinating look at the very influential Star Trek, the original series. I am your navigator and Lieutenant Commander, Dana Smith. And with me, as always, our Rear Admiral of Pandemonium, my good friend, Dan Calzaretta. Good evening, Dan.
I like the different descriptions of, of my rank. I think this one might be my favorite, Pandemonium. I like that.
Yeah, well, you'd bring a certain amount of chaos to things that this show would be lacking without you, because it would just be me.
Well, I quit, Dana. I quit.
Okay, I'll give you a raise again next week. So
okay, good.
So Dan, you went to Seattle to see a Cubs game or two, right?
That's right. I went and they won both games. And do you know why they won?
Because you wore your lucky Cubs socks.
I did. Yes. They didn't win because they got more runs, Dana. They won because I wore my lucky socks. That's right. And they won last night in Phoenix, and they're playing tonight. So I'm not going to wash those socks until they lose.
You still wearing them?
No, I'm not wearing them now, but
Okay, well, I think to really go the distance, you need to wear them until they lose.
I think you're right. Yeah.
Now the Rockies here, I need to wear socks until they win, and I'm feeling the socks will fall off my feet before that happens. So.
You need to wear the good luck charm thong is what you need. The Rockies thong.
Out in public?
Yeah, I think that'd probably be good. Yeah. They'd have to surgically remove it by the time they kind of had a winning streak going. Talk about streaking. Yeah. How about you? What'd you do this weekend?
Oh, I played golf this weekend.
Oh, nice.
First time in about a year.
Wow. Because of the shoulder.
Yeah.
Nice.
And had fun. Went with two of our friends. My wife and I went out. It was a lot of fun. We had a good time.
Did you win?
We didn't keep score.
So you lost.
No, it wasn't about competition. It was about getting out for the first time this year. And it was a beautiful day. It was 80 degrees. And
nice.
Then we went to the clubhouse and had a beer and had a burger and stuff. So it was like a full event.
All right. Sounds good.
Yeah. So I'm hoping to get out and golf some more.
Well, I have a little news. I gave blood last week, Dana.
Yeah.
And the guy who drew I was wearing my Damnit Jim, the podcast polo shirt, by the way.
Very handsome in the Damnit Jim podcast polo shirt, no doubt.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, of course. And the guy who, checked me in and then eventually drew my blood, he said, oh, what are you doing today? And I said, well, I'm working. And he said, oh, what are you doing? And I said, well, I'm actually editing this podcast, and, pointed at the shirt. And he's like, oh, I've heard of that podcast. I think my sister and I listened to that in the car one day. I'm like, oh, that's great. I'm hoping he didn't listen to the episode where we made fun of people who draw your blood. Do you remember that episode?
I do remember that. Yeah.
And so when I got on the chair and he went to draw the blood, I kind of flinched a little bit. And he said, oh, I saw you flinch. I was thinking, that fucker stabbed me on purpose.
Yeah. Isn't the needle supposed to go in my arm and not in my neck?
Yeah, right. Actually, none of that part is true. But he did hear the podcast. People should donate blood. Once again, we've talked about this many times, Dana. If you have the opportunity and the ability to donate blood, you should go ahead and do it.
So, Dan, should we move on to the listener comments?
Yeah, let's do it.
Last week, we discussed That Which Survives, and I was kind of surprised. We only got one comment about our, what we discussed, paleontologists, geologists, and we wrongly identified Indiana Jones.
Yes, I also heard about that from a friend of mine.
I didn't get an email, but a friend of mine said the same thing. It's like, Indiana Jones is an archaeologist.
My friend said the exact same thing. And I said, well, you need to call in and just give us the business.
Yeah.
For getting that wrong, but she didn't want to.
So on Facebook, Glenn Strathy said, must confess, That Which Survives is my least favorite episode, worse than Spock's brain.
Wow.
Yeah. Kurt Baird said, great episode from start to finish. I'm assuming he was talking about our episode.
I think that's absolutely clear that he was talking about the podcast. It has to be, right?
What else could he mean?
Right.
Daniel Harris says, this is the first Star Trek episode I ever saw. It was probably around autumn 1975. It was right around my 9th birthday.
Dana, I don't remember what happened last week, let alone my 9th birthday.
Anthony Beard said, Spock is such a smartass in this episode. I love it.
I'm totally with him on that, Dana. I know you're not so much on the, Spock being a smartass bandwagon as apparently I am, and whatever that guy's name was, but he's very smart, whoever he is.
Anthony Beard.
That guy.
I didn't hate it. I liked it, but he just didn't stop.
Right.
Our good friend Olivia said, great podcast, guys. I was dying laughing as usual. She said, I haven't seen this episode yet, but honestly, you guys made me want to check it out. Also, I'd love to add something to the end of the series listener poll, if it ends up being a thing. How about best running podcast jokes? There was so many good ones like Schmitter, Jägermeister, Mabingud, the list goes on. Anyway, congrats on another wonderful podcast episode.
That's a great idea, Dana. I like that.
Thank you very much, Olivia. We will, of course, take your suggestion into consideration. So our good friend Matthew Fleming said, so I'm listening to your podcast while I'm mowing my yard. Your pizza ramble went on so long, I got hungry for pizza and had to stop and eat some pizza. And long live pepperoni pizza.
Oh, that's great. We did kind of go on the pizza thing for a while, didn't we?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
I did make pizza this past Friday, and I'm going to make it again this Friday. I make it not every Friday, Dana. We make it from scratch, the dough and the sauce. Yeah, and then we put it on the smoker, and it's amazing. You actually gave me the idea of doing pizza on the smoker.
Hey, I'm good for something.
Yeah. Yeah.
Patricia Godby said, this is one of those episodes that I half liked and half did not like. I don't know, hard to explain. And I could understand that. Dan, do you have any emails or phone calls you want to discuss?
Dana, we did get a few phone calls. One was the wrong number. The other one, the audio quality wasn't very good. So if people do call, a couple of suggestions. Speak into the mouth hole of the phone. That would be number one. And then speak clearly, because that makes for a good phone call. However, we did get a couple of YouTube comments, Dana. JD Lewis is back this week, Dana, with another fun fact. JD said about the episode That Which Survives, fun fact, good episode and great reaction today. Kirk's remark, quote, if I wanted a Russian history lesson, I would have brought Mr. Chekhov along, end quote, was a reference to the fact that Sulu's part was originally written for Chekhov, who was in a play with Jackie Coogan for a few weeks at the time. So he couldn't be in the episode, I suppose. Second fun fact, Dana. We got several here. Second fun fact. John Meredith Lucas, who rewrote DC Fontana's script, he really missed the humor that made Star Trek great, which was removed in Season 3 by Roddenberry and Freiberger. Lucas snuck in some hilarious exchanges between Scotty and Spock. Since Roddenberry was away writing and producing Pretty Maids All in a Row, and Freiberger had pretty much given up by this point, he was able to sneak the humor in. Take care and see you soon. P.S. Dan and Dana, I'm for you, LOL.
Nice.
Yeah, very nice. And then Olaf Olafsson also wrote in this week. He was referring to the Mark of Gideon, which was a couple episodes ago. Olaf says, why didn't Gideon just ask for ships to move their people to another planet? And I think we brought that up, didn't we, Dana?
No.
Okay. Well, we talked about it, but it didn't make it into the podcast.
Yeah, that's possible.
He said, awful episode and a serious budget cut episode. No sets outside of the ship were used. No cast was used for more than a day or two of filming. Enough. Just cancel it already. Thanks, Olaf. That's kind of how we feel some days after we get done reviewing these episodes.
Yeah, it makes you wonder. If they were just, really trying to skate by on the bare necessities, as it were. Anyway,
that's everything that I have for this week, Dana.
Okay. Well, thanks to everybody for writing in and the phone calls. As Dan said, make sure you speak clearly. If you're asking for a Damnit Jim polo shirt, can't get it to you if we don't understand what the address is. So thanks again for everybody's comments. Looking forward to hearing more.
This podcast is being brought to you by North Shore Adult Diapers. North Shore offers reassuringly strong protection for even the heaviest control problems and can keep you dry and confident for up to 12 hours. so you can live your life with freedom and dignity.
Whether you are attending a baseball game, having dinner with friends, getting on a plane, or just sitting back listening to the Damnit Jim podcast, the last thing you want to worry about is incontinence. Don't be trapped at home. Be secure in knowing that North Shore has you covered with a true quality product.
You can even put North Shore's products to the test by requesting up to 6 product samples. And Dana, our listeners can use the code KIRK at checkout to receive $10 off their next order over $50. Go to northshore.com today to place your order or request product samples. This offer can be used only once per customer and may not be combined with other offers.
Dan, should we get started with the Lights of Zetar? Dan, after this episode, there are only 6 episodes left.
What? I thought that was last time we were there only 6, Dana. Now I'm really confused.
We had a recount.
Oh, there was a recount.
Okay, Dan. So let's get started with the Lights of Zetar. So we see the Enterprise not circling a planet.
Yeah, it was an awesome opening.
Yeah, it surprised me. I was like looking for the planet. So we get Captain's log, stardate 5725.3. The Enterprise is en route to Memory Alpha. It is a planetoid set up by the Federation solely as a central library containing the total cultural history and scientific knowledge of all Planetary Federation members. That's a big library.
Yeah, it's huge. But I love the idea of that, though.
Oh, yeah. And with us is Specialist Lieutenant Mira Romaine. She is on board to supervise the transfer of newly designed equipment directly from the Enterprise to Memory Alpha. So next thing we see is Scotty working with this Lieutenant Romaine in engineering.
With his tongue hanging on the floor.
Yeah, he is just like glowing with smiles.
He is.
So Scotty approaches Romaine and says she's the smartest, nicest person who's ever been aboard the Enterprise. That's saying a lot. They've had a lot of smart people aboard the Enterprise.
Yeah.
She smiles at him and asks, anything else? And Scotty's smiles gets actually bigger. And he says, anything else? I'll keep to myself for the moment.
Okay. All right. We've started just in a stellar way so far with this episode.
So then we hear Kirk.
When a man of Scotty's years falls in love, the loneliness of his life is suddenly revealed to him. His whole heart once throbbed only to the ship's engines. He could talk only to the ship. Now he can see nothing but the woman.
So, Dana, Kirk uses the word throb in his little monologue about Scotty, right? So this is the second time, at least, that I can remember that the word throb or throbbing has been used. I don't know if you remember this, Dana, but in Conscience of the King, Lenore says to Kirk, and the ship, all this power surging and throbbing, yet under control.
Yeah.
Are you like that, Captain?
I remember that. I just imagine women always say that to Kirk. Just then a red light on the helm flashes. Sulu says he's picking up high-intensity readings. We see a glowing object moving toward the Enterprise on the view screen. Lieutenant Romaine seems intrigued and actually steps closer to the view screen. Spock says it appears to be a storm, and Sulu says, Captain, it's approaching at warp factor 2.6 and accelerating.
That's impossible, though, isn't it, Dana?
That's funny. That's what Kirk said. It's almost like you watched the episode.
I did. I watch it every week, Dana. I really do. It's just sometimes I think my brain just like snaps off because something so stupid is happening that I can't even comprehend it. And then I lose a few minutes of time.
That's why you fade in and out on this podcast. Is that it?
That's exactly right. I'm sorry. What were you talking about again? I mean, I don't want to admit it, but I actually could not remember why Romaine was on the ship until you just said that it was her job to transfer the equipment down there. I was thinking, why is she on that ship? I couldn't remember that.
Well, it's funny because I was thinking, why is she in engineering?
And she doesn't have a red shirt on either. She's got a blue shirt. What is that supposed to be?
Science geek. Likes to hang out with the engineers.
Oh, maybe that's it. Yeah. There's probably some joke in there that we couldn't put in anyway. So why?
Yeah, I was just going to say. So Kirk says, check that. No natural phenomena can move faster than the speed of light. Spock says, it is definitely doing so, Captain. Therefore, it cannot be a phenomenon of nature. Phenomenon.
Phenomenon. Phenomenon. Phenomenon.
Phenomenon.
A friend of mine, sorry, I got to tell this story. I don't think I've ever told this story on the podcast. A friend of mine's dad wrote the Manamana song.
Really?
I went to school with her. She was from Italy, and her dad wrote that song. He was approached to write the music for some of the spaghetti westerns. And he's like, oh, those aren't ever going to go anywhere. So I'm not going to do that. He's actually a very famous composer in Italy, very famous, kind of jazz and all kinds of stuff. And he wrote the Manamana song.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
Last week you said you grew up next to a Miss America.
Yeah.
And now you know the guy that wrote the Manamana song?
I know his daughter. I didn't know him.
So Lieutenant Romaine continues to move closer to the main screen. The sparkling image is very close now, and everyone shields their eyes. Uhura seems to be thrown from her chair all of a sudden. Did you notice that?
No, I didn't notice that.
So Lieutenant Romaine continues to move closer to the main screen. The sparkling image is now very close. Lieutenant Romaine continues just to stare while, again, everybody else is covering their eyes. And then we zoom in all the way into her pupil, and we see the flashing lights are now like inside her pupil. I thought that was a good effect.
It was, especially for the time, you know?
Yeah. Spock is shielding his eyes as he watches the screen. Kirk is still unable to speak, and then he throws his arms up over his eyes in a very dramatic way.
Yeah, the shatometer for me was an 8 out of 10, I would say, at that point. It was quite shatmatic.
So then the lights pull back, and suddenly Kirk regains his voice, and he commands Sulu to get them the hell out of there.
And that's only the second time, right?
Yeah.
The first one was in...
City on the Edge of Forever.
Yeah, City on the Edge of Forever. That's right.
Lieutenant Romaine all just like crumbles to the floor.
Yeah, she kind of passes out.
So Scotty sees her, and he runs to her.
I didn't think the Cosby drink would take effect so quickly. Can we get sued for that, Dana? I've asked you a few times. Have we received any cease and desist letters yet from Bill Cosby and or his lawyers?
Not yet.
Okay, good.
Yeah, very good. Yeah. Scotty asks Romaine, says, what is it you're saying? We're hearing this like weird noises coming from her.
Yeah, I mean, it reminded me a little bit of The Exorcist. You know, just these weird, like, demonic noises almost.
Reminded me of the noises that the little aliens in Cat's Paw made at the end of the show when they were just like the little aliens.
I wonder if it was the same noise.
So McCoy comes on the bridge and kneels down next to her and checks her real quick. And then, of course, he gives her an injection.
Of course he does.
I mean, it's like, he had no idea what was wrong with her.
Right.
And she says she's fine. Kirk orders her to sickbay. So we go to sickbay where Romaine is staring off into space as McCoy is checking her out.
You wanted me to say something there.
I was just expecting. So Romaine seems a little perturbed that they are running so many tests. And McCoy says he wants to know why she's the only person that passed out. Scotty comes in. Scotty tries to defend her, saying, this is her first trip into space. So Romaine sits up and asks if this will affect her career, and Scotty assures her it won't and says, it's just getting used to space travel. And she asks if it happened to Scotty, and he says, I was practically born to it. He adds, you just have to get your space legs. On the bridge, Sulu reports he's plotted a path for the storm. So suddenly the storm is on Memory Alpha, and Kirk seems frustrated. He asks Spock, how many people are on the planetoid?
None now.
Living or dead? Yeah. So the storm leaves Memory Alpha, and Spock says there are no energy readings. Kirk asks about life readings, and Spock says none. So Kirk says they need to find out what happened. Kirk calls Scotty in engineering, but gets no answer. He hails him again, and finally Scotty answers, and Scotty says he's in sickbay checking on the lass.
Checking on her what? What was he checking on?
Lass.
Oh, lass. Okay. All right.
And he says, she's going to be fine now. There's nothing wrong with her.
Well, I'm relieved to hear your prognosis, Mr. Scott. Is the doctor there with you, or will I find him in engineering?
Or on the bridge, right, Dana?
Yeah, maybe in the rec hall or something, because he's seldom in sickbay, it seems.
Yeah.
So McCoy answers, and Kirk says, Doctor, how's the girl? And McCoy says, I think she's in good shape.
God, they keep referring to her as a girl throughout the whole episode.
Kirk says, well, Mr. Scott seems to agree with you. The two of you meet me in the transporter room on the double. So McCoy and Scotty leave. Then we zoom into Romaine's eye and see the sparkling lights and an image of a dead alien. So we see Kirk, Spock, Scotty, and McCoy beam down to the planetoid. Scotty walks into another room and calls for Kirk. They all come in and we see dead people.
Well, they're not people. They're aliens.
Dead aliens.
One's an Andorian, right? The blue with the weird antennae.
Yeah. So the image that we see of the dead alien is what we saw in Romaine's eye.
So it's almost like she was seeing through space and time, Dana.
Like a premonition.
Yeah.
So then Spock finds a very faint life reading, and McCoy rounds the corner and finds a woman there on the floor. And the woman looks like she's trying to talk, and the sounds are the same as what Romaine made before.
Well, to me, it sounded, Dana, like my stomach sounds after too much dairy.
McCoy says it's the same sound Romaine made.
Yeah.
And then the woman lies back down and stops moving. And McCoy says she's dead.
We at least got one.
Yeah, thank God. Being a boring show.
Or more boring, maybe, would be the way to put it.
Yeah. So Kirk calls for Romaine to be sent down.
Why?
Yeah, I don't know why they had to get Romaine sent down.
It really doesn't make any sense to me.
And then McCoy says the woman died of severe brain hemorrhaging due to distortion of all neural systems, dissolution of autonomic nervous system, all basic personality factors.
Again, what does that even mean? I understand what a brain hemorrhage is, right? Kind of like a stroke. The personality piece?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
I think he's just making shit up.
I'm just hoping I keep my job and that Mbinga doesn't, take over for me.
I got to make this sound as good as possible. Yeah. So Romaine beams down. Scotty goes to her and says, the captain wants to ask you a few questions. Kirk comes up and asks about when she was unconscious, if she remembered what she said. And she says she doesn't remember. And Romaine seems kind of alarmed. She runs into the room where the dead people are dead aliens are, and everyone follows her. She says, we must get out of here. The storm is returning. Kirk asks, how do you know? On the Enterprise, we see the storm approaching on the screen. It appears to be heading right back towards the planetoid. So Sulu hails Kirk and tells him about the storm, and Kirk tells him to beam them up. On the bridge, we see the entity following the Enterprise. And engineering Romaine is telling Scotty that she saw the dead men before it happened, and Scotty tries to brush it off as it's just space. Your mind is playing tricks on you.
Have you ever had visions of the future events before this?
Never.
And if you ask me, nobody ever has. That scene of the future, it's pure bunk. You know that, don't you?
Back on the bridge, Kirk is watching closely as the storm keeps approaching. Sulu says it's heading straight for us, and Kirk orders Chekhov to change course. They change course, but the storm stays with them. Spock says the object is not getting closer. It is matching our maneuvers, and I am receiving increasing magnitude of energy.
Huh?
I don't know what that means.
No, I don't either, Dana.
Kirk asks, your analysis, Spock? What is it? And Spock says, not what is it, Captain. What are they?
Whom are they? Before joining Starfleet, I was an English professor at a dumpy-ass little college somewhere on planet Earth in 2024.
Oh, wow. Just never going to let that one go.
I don't think I can. I really don't think I can.
Spock goes on, there are 10 distinct life units within it. Kirk asks about defensive moves, and Spock suggests that the ship is not well matched. Says, Captain, we are dealing with a community of life units. Their attack is in the form of brainwaves directed against the brain.
Yeah, no shit, Sherlock.
So Kirk orders all hailing frequencies open. Kirk steps forward and says, this is Captain James Kirk of the USS Enterprise. We wish you no harm. Physical contact between us is fatal to our life forms. Please do not come any closer to our ship. And then Sulu says, Captain, change in velocity recorded. They are passing our starboard side and maneuvering in front of us. He puts the ship on red alert and orders phasers ready.
Here we go. Here we go, Dana.
He wants to shoot across it, but he's emphatic that they don't hit it. And Sulu says, phasers locked in. They fire, but the storm shows no change. Kirk says prepare to fire into the heart of the community. In engineering, Romaine grabs her stomach and yells, Scotty! And then falls to the floor. Scotty calls up to the bridge and says, the phasers are killing Mira. Scotty says, when you fired, she crumpled. If you fire again, you kill her.
Okay, 2 questions. 1, how does he know the phasers were even being fired?
He's the chief engineer. He knows everything. He could felt it like a disturbance on the force.
And then how does he know that the phasers are killing Mira?
Yeah, I had the same question.
Yeah.
It made no sense.
Maybe he does think he's a doctor now.
So Kirk orders her taken to sickbay at once. Kirk calls for McCoy. He asks, is the girl well enough to be questioned?
Dana, they keep calling her the girl. Every time in this episode when they refer to her, they refer to her as the girl. I mean, she's a woman. She is a lieutenant in Starfleet.
Yeah, it's demeaning.
Totally, yeah.
Kirk says, have the lieutenant and Mr. Scott in the briefing room as quickly as possible. Then he tells Mr. Spock to come with them, and they head out. In the conference room, McCoy comes in and tells Kirk to go easy on her. Kirk says the 2 events are you passing out on the bridge and us firing phasers that almost killed you. So McCoy puts a disc in the computer.
Sorry, he puts a what?
McCoy puts a disc in the computer.
Okay, just wanted to check.
Kirk asks, any evidence of involuntary or unconscious telepathic abilities? McCoy says, none.
What about incontinence? Any incontinence?
And McCoy says, no, Captain, not empathic. McCoy says, after our phasers hit that thing, I gave Lieutenant Romaine a standard Steinman analysis.
What are they talking about?
I gave her a Steinway. Yeah, so it's a...
I call it the Steinway.
According to 2 hyperencephalograms, her brainwave pattern has been altered.
My brainwaves are being altered right now, Dana. And not in a good way.
We should have our brains scanned while we're doing this show. Do you ever have a brain scan?
No, I've never had like an MRI or the only thing I think I've had is an X-ray. How about you? Have you?
Long time ago, they did an EKG and EEG.
They find anything?
Very little. So McCoy puts the brain patterns up on the computer screen. Spock looks at the screen and raises an eyebrow. And Spock says, are you sure that this is the correct slide? McCoy says, yes, Mr. Spock.
Yeah, you want to run the fucking PowerPoint, Spock? Or do you want me to take care of it?
Who's the doctor here?
Well, Mabinga, but who's the other doctor?
Sanchez, yeah.
Well, who's the other doctor? Well, Chapel's pretty close. She's probably actually the smartest one of all of you down there.
So Spock puts up something he calls tape H, and it's, basically the image matches exactly to Romaine's brain patterns.
Right.
We learn that that's the brain pattern of the pattern from this entity. It has made her brain pattern similar to its own.
Okay. So she went from like a romaine to like a Caesar salad.
Yeah, I was thinking more like a chef salad.
Or a chef salad. Okay. I'm not a huge salad person, but I do like salads.
Yeah, I like salad. Not as much as I like pizza.
No, that's goes without saying.
You ever have a good wedge salad?
A what? Wedge?
Yeah, wedge salad.
Is this like when you get a wedgie when you're in middle school? Is that what that is? What is a wedge salad? I don't think I've ever even heard of it.
You've never heard of a wedge salad?
No, I don't even know what it is. What is it?
It's just a wedge of iceberg lettuce.
Yeah.
And then it has blue cheese, bacon crumbles.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times they use like a vinaigrette over it.
Hmm.
It's tasty. And croutons too. But you literally get a wedge.
My favorite dressing growing up was Russian, for sure.
Yeah, mine was Western, which is like very close to Russian.
It's the capitalist version of Russian, not the communist version.
Exactly. Yeah. So, you pinko.
These last 2 episodes, we've been getting on kind of a food kind of jag, haven't we?
Yeah, I was going to say, should our next podcast be what'd you have for dinner this week?
Yeah, that's just the whole podcast should just be about food.
Yeah, and somehow throw in Star Trek references that don't pertain to the actual food we're talking about. Kind of like how we're doing the food, what doesn't pertain to the show.
Except that her name is Romaine, so there's kind of a tangential connection there.
Yeah.
But romaine's not a salad. Romaine is a lettuce. right?
Yes. I suppose you could have a romaine salad.
It'd just be the lettuce.
Okay, back to the show.
Yeah, anyway.
Spock says, Dr. McCoy is correct. There is an identity of minds taking place. So did you hear anywhere in there that they came up with a conclusion on how to handle this?
No, there was no conclusion.
Okay, just checking. I thought I missed something.
Well, I thought I fell asleep again. That's what I thought happened. And I didn't want to admit it. So I'm glad you asked the question.
On the bridge, Sulu reports the alien is no longer maintaining distance. Kirk orders to continue evasive maneuvers. So Sulu calls Kirk and says they've continued evasive orders to no effect. So Kirk orders Warp 8. And he looks to Romaine and says, they'll be here very soon. They may destroy you and us as they did Memory Alpha, but we have one chance to survive. Don't resist. Let them begin to function through you. If we can control that moment, we have a chance. Kirk calls the medical lab, and Kirk says, prepare the anti-grav test units. So they all take off. As they go down the hall, we hear Sulu saying, attention, all personnel, attention. Alien force has penetrated the ship.
More penetration happening, Dana.
Yeah, lots of penetration tonight. On the bridge, we see the colors flashing bigger and brighter than before. Then Sulu over the intercom again says, take defensive action. Like, get a fly swatter? What? You know,
But you see in the hallway, there was the guy who was
screwing something in the wall.
Yeah, like screwing something in the wall or turning some device by that yellow piece of equipment that was stuck on the wall. People didn't seem that upset.
They were walking a little bit faster, but I mean, you know.
Maybe a little faster, yeah.
Yeah, overall. And there was like a man and a woman that were talking as they're walking down the hall.
Right.
Like, you know.
Sulu's always saying that stuff about take defensive action. I don't believe him.
Yeah. So then we hear security announce, General Quarters, Security Condition 3, Intruder Alert. Repeat, General Quarters, Security Condition 3, Intruder Alert. And where'd the security announcement go that we've never heard before?
I guess if Kirk's not on the bridge, everyone just thinks, hey, we can get a hold of the microphone and start talking to the entire ship.
Hey, it's like Mr. Microphone. Hey, good looking.
God, remember that Mr. Microphone? Did you ever have one of those?
No, I knew one of the guys in town had it. One of the guys in my class had that, though.
Do you remember the commercial, though? They're riding in like a convertible.
Yeah, I remember that thing. It's like, hey, good looking.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly
Yeah.
it. The guy's like sitting up on the back of the convertible. Totally dangerous. Could easily die.
Did I ever tell you about the time I almost died in the back of a convertible?
No, this sounds like a pretty good story, though. What was her name?
Amazingly enough, it wasn't somebody that broke my heart. We had gone to see my dad's boss and had lunch with him. And then we were driving back and he was driving back to our house with us. But he had this convertible. We had seen like the monkeys or whatever it was where they sat on the back of the car and the convertible.
Yeah.
So we asked if we could sit like that. And he's like, yeah. He says, but hang on. He goes, when we get near the highway, he goes, I'm going to step on it.
You're going on the highway. Jesus.
My brothers and I are sitting in the back, and it was two older brothers were on each side of me. All of a sudden, he steps on it. One of my brothers like slid down into the seat.
Yeah.
I went back. I was like on the trunk.
Oh my God.
And my other brother managed to turn and grab my leg. I was not far from flying off the back of that car.
Wow.
Yeah. So then my two brothers pulled me down, pulled me back in place. And I was like yelling at my dad's boss, like, you almost killed me. He's just like, got the radio on, wind in his hair, driving away. So
your dad's like, kids, stop playing around back there. Stop goofing around, whatever you're doing.
I think about that sometimes because that was scary.
I mean, that's probably in the day when they're like, seatbelts. Yeah, I really don't need them,
Baby seats didn't exist. Moms held babies in their lap, or they'd pass the baby around to somebody in back.
While they're smoking. Yeah.
Yeah, here, hold the baby while I shake a cocktail for your dad who's driving.
The good old days, Dana.
So inside the, I don't know, was it McCoy's area or was the gravity chamber room? I don't know what it was.
I don't know either.
The flashing lights descend on everyone, and then they seem to focus on Romaine. And then they said, if only she was a wedge salad.
I was just going to say that.
Scotty starts to go towards her, and she warns Scotty not to touch her. Kirk holds Scotty back.
Well, you don't want me to touch you now, but you didn't complain about an hour ago, lass.
McCoy's like standing there using the tricorder and says, she could kill us all in this state. And Spock says, she will, unless we are able to complete what the captain has planned.
Oh, hold on now. So this whole thing, how did Kirk even come up with this plan?
Yeah, well, that's why I was asking you earlier if they came up with a plan. Romaine says her own name and then says, I will be who I choose to be. She says, they are within me. She falls to the floor and we see her lips move as a voice comes through. And Kirk says, who are you? And they say, we are from Zetar. And Spock says, that is one of the planets where all humanoid life was destroyed. And Kirk says, you can't be from Zetar. He says, all life was destroyed there long ago. And the voice says, yes, all corporeal life was destroyed. Then Kirk says, then what are you? The desires, the hopes, the mind, and the will of the last 100 of Zetar.
God, Dana, this is just, I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt right now. This is incredibly stupid and difficult for me to get through, Dana. I cannot hardly do it.
What was the one with the orbs?
Yeah, this is not a new thing. It's happened several times, Dana.
The voice says, don't fight us. And Spock says, they will not accept their own deaths. And Kirk says, they will be forced to accept it. And then Kirk says, we must get her into the pressure chamber. So then McCoy says, Jim, you realize the pressure needed to kill the Zetars might kill the girl too. You realize that the Zetars can hear all this, right? It's not like he walked over and whispered into Kirk's ear. So Kirk goes to pick her up, and Scotty stops and saying, Mira will not kill me. So he puts her in the chamber and is suddenly knocked backwards. Scotty says, I told you she wouldn't kill me.
Why couldn't the Zetarians just get out or, just not even get in there?
Yeah, when he picked her up, why not just knock Scotty down before he even puts her in the chamber?
Right.
Go and kill everybody else in the room and go back to her.
Right.
Kirk orders pressure increased, and Spock continues increasing the pressure.
So why do they even need to be in a weightless environment?
I got no freaking idea. It's just...
It's not even worth like guessing at this point.
Yeah. It's just a neat effect of her floating in there, which looked totally fake, by the way. So
It did look fake. Because here's one of the problems. Her hair was hanging straight down.
Yeah.
In a weightless environment, it would be all over the place.
So in the chamber, we zoom into Romaine's eye and we see the flashing colors leaving her. McCoy says, we've done it, Jim. They're gone.
And she's dead.
She just inside the chamber.
Get the hose. We got to wash this thing down again.
Scotty, we know you love her. We'll let you clean it up. So then the next thing we have is we're in McCoy's office later on. Kirk says, do I take it that both of you agree that Lieutenant Romaine need not to return to Starbase for further treatment? And McCoy's like, well, I should think work would be better therapy. And Spock says logical. So Kirk calls to Scotty and asks how Lieutenant Romaine is doing. And Scotty, of course, is like, she's beautiful, Captain. Do I take that she's fit for duty? Scotty agrees.
Well, this is an Enterprise first. Dr. McCoy, Mr. Spock, and Engineer Scott find themselves in complete agreement. Can I stand the strain?
And Dan, that's how the show ends.
So, Dana, you have some information about this episode that you want to share.
Yeah, Dan. Lieutenant Romaine was played by Jan Schutten. Aside from this iconic role, her face might also be familiar. She appeared in a lot of TV commercials. She starred in ads for Tarrington cigarettes and went on to promote, in her own words, anything from cars to soap suds, earning her up to $10,000 per gig.
Wow.
So she had roles in TV shows like The Outer Limits and The Fugitive. She was in Night Gallery and Room 222. Dan, she also appeared in a Russ Meyer film, The 7 Minutes. It's about a bookstore clerk who's indicted for selling obscene material. Russ Meyer films always, there was some sexual aspect to all of his films.
All right. How many of these do you have on tape?
I've got the whole Russ Meyer collection. Yeah, sadly, she passed away in 2021 at the age of 88. Do you have anything you want to share with us about this episode, Dan?
Yes, Dana, the episode was written by Sherry Lewis and her husband, Jeremy Tarcher. You might recognize the name Sherry Lewis. She was a ventriloquist and a puppeteer who created Lamb Chop. Do you remember Lamb Chop?
Oh, yeah. I had one of my childhood friends loved Lamb Chop and had the Lamb Chop hand puppet.
Dana, I hate Lamb Chop. I continue to hate Lamb Chop. I've never liked Lamb Chop. I've never seen the appeal in Lamb Chop. But if you think about it, Romaine gets taken over by aliens and they speak through her. So it's kind of like Lamb Chop, with Sherry Lewis's hand up Lamb Chop's, whatever it's up. I just don't get Lamb Chop. The interesting thing is Sherry Lewis's daughter now has the Lamb Chop franchise.
Oh,
and
really?
does the whole Lamb Chop thing.
I found it interesting. Lewis wrote Scott's love affair into the episode because she thought Captain Kirk is the one who always gets the girl, and she wanted to see somebody else get the girl.
Anyway, Dana, that's all I've got.
Dan, do you want to discuss themes and dilemmas?
Yeah, let's do it, Dana.
What do you got?
A headache, Dana. I've got a headache after this episode. No, one of the dilemmas I saw, Dana, was can a ship romance ever turn into a good thing? It seems like the Federation would have had rules against this,
Yeah.
I mean, you're in HR. It's probably not a good thing if people working in the same place. I mean, especially like what if Scotty, for example, was in the ion pod and they had a nasty breakup and she was in charge of ejecting the pod, Dana? Goodbye, Scotty, right? Anyway, that's the dilemma I had. How about for you, Dana?
I went a little bit deeper than you did, Dan. So
That's not new, though, really.
Is this perhaps, in a broad sense, the idea that women are subjugated by men for their own purposes at the complete expense of the woman's desires?
Yeah, I think you're exactly right.
The aliens appeared to be men, and they were putting their lives ahead of hers.
Right.
This just seemed like, to me, a way that men tried to control women. So that's all I got for that.
Dana, how about if we do the best and worst?
Yeah, that'd be great, Dan.
What's the best part that you've got?
Scotty being in love. Nice to see him in that role. How about you? Do you have a best part?
The creepy voice that was coming out of the woman who was on Memory Alpha and out of Lieutenant Romaine. I just thought it was a well done sound effect and it was kind of scary. How about another best part for you, Dana?
I did like the fact it was a non-human alien. I didn't so much like it was a consciousness floating through space again. How about you? Do you have another best part?
Similar to the episode Wolf in the Fold, Scotty gets a lot of lines in this episode and he's the focus. And I kind of like that. How about a worst part for you, Dana?
We discussed this a little bit, but the pressure chamber, how did they know this would kill the Zetars? Like we said, it didn't get explained, just didn't make any sense to me. How about a worst part for you, Dan?
Scotty seems deeply in love with Lieutenant Romaine, but we never hear of her again. I mean, it's like they're about to get married, and we don't hear anything in this episode, of course, and there's nothing that's going to happen in the rest of the season that even mentions her. I mean, maybe a salad is named after her, or a lettuce. That's just dumb. Lettuce and salad jokes, Dana, they're dumb. How about another worst part for you?
McCoy, quick with the hypo. Just the fact he gives Romaine a shot before he really knows what's wrong. That type of doctor would scare the crap out of me. It's like, oh, you fell down. Here, let me give you a shot.
So, Dana, what happened on this date in history?
Dan, this aired on January 31st, 1969. Amazingly, there wasn't much going on. The number one song in the U.S. changed, though, became Crimson and Clover by Tommy James and the Shondells.
Wow.
And then in the U.K., the number one song was Blackberry Way by Move.
I think Move was the progenitor of Electric Light Orchestra.
Yeah. Also on January 31st, Meher Baba, I'd probably get in trouble for saying that wrong, the Indian spiritual master who claimed to have been an avatar of the deity Vishnu, passed away at age 74. On January 30th, Dan, the Beatles gave their very last public performance in what is now called the Rooftop Concert, setting up their instruments on the roof of the London building that served as the corporate headquarters for their recording company, Applecore. Lasting 42 minutes, the impromptu concert atop the 5-story building at 3 Savile Row was filmed for their 1970 film, Let It Be. This podcast is being brought to you by North Shore. North Shore offers premium incontinence products that can improve your quality of life. Managing incontinence can feel like a no-win scenario. Local drugstores often have a lack of options or sizes or have cheap products that leak. North Shore is way different.
Dana, incontinence affects over 13 million people in the United States alone. I have a close friend with multiple sclerosis who uses North Shore diapers to help him lead a normal life.
North Shore products can empower you to live your life on your terms by providing maximum absorbency that allows you to be dry and confident. It allows you to be you. And Dan, our listeners can use the code KIRK at checkout to receive $10 off their next order over $50. Go to northshore.com today.
Dana, on to the counts. What was the dead crewman count this week?
0 this week, Dan. We are still at 52.5.
How about the shirtless Kirk Ripshirt Kirk count?
We had 0. We are still stuck at 20.
The he's dead count.
We got one, so that moves us up to 23.
I'm a doctor, not a fill in the blank.
Nothing this week, so we are still at 9.
The supreme being count.
Nope, even the Zetarians weren't very supreme, so we are still stuck at 12.
Now, we did have 2 violations of the Prime Directive this week.
As I said last week, name one.
Okay. How many violations of the Prime Directive do we have, Dana?
I had 0, Dan. Did you have any?
No, 0.
So we are still at 12.
Taking over the Enterprise count.
No, so still 0, so we are at 18.
And finally, who's commanding the Enterprise?
Now, Kirk and Spock both left the Enterprise, but this never said who's in charge. And Sulu always seemed to be at his station, so I'm saying 0.
I agree.
Then we are still at 52.
Dana, I gotta say, there have been bad episodes in season 3. But this one, for some reason, I found very difficult to get through. Like I think I was nodding off during part of the episode. I might even be asleep right now. I'm not really sure.
Well, Dan, again, and I said this last week, I kind of like this one. And I mean, it's not my top 40, but I liked it for what's happened this season. I like seeing Scotty in love. There's some serious plot holes, but there was some good tension and kind of a little bit different. So I liked it.
Well, I think one thing Scotty was trying to do was to plug some of those plot holes.
Yeah, Dan, and one of the things you kind of mentioned is the memory alpha concept. I wish that they could have expanded upon that more.
Dana, what do we have for next week?
Next week, Dan, it's Requiem for Methuselah. How bad can it be?
Well, Dana, still once again enjoyed talking about the episode, and I really appreciated people who called in, wrote in. But if you're going to call in, once again, speak into the mouth hole on the phone, please. I think we all know where that is at this point. The phone number is 509-676-6298. Do we still have any of those shirts left, Dana?
Still have a few polo shirts left. I'll be sending a couple out this week. But if you want one, give us a call. Let us know what you like about the podcast or about Star Trek itself. But it has to be about the original series.
The shirts are nice. They are very nice looking.
Attract a lot of attention.
They do. Good and bad. Okay, Dana, I'll see you next week.
Hey, Dan, thanks as always for sitting down and talking about Star Trek with me. It's always a lot of fun. Until we meet again, live long and prosper.
Thanks once again for listening to Damnit Jim, the podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Please send us an email at damnitjimpodcast@gmail.com or join the discussion on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, or X. You can also call the Damnit Jim Hotline at 509-676-6298. Enjoy the rest of your week, and as always, remember to live long and prosper. This has been a Ramble Jar production.